Well, The Batman has hit cinemas, and with a runtime of almost 3 hours, there's a lot of material in this film to discuss. The film is an intense, Fincheresque crime thriller, a noir detective mystery with a stylised gothic aesthetic. It incorporates hallmarks of this genre, such as voiceover from the main character to open and close the film, journal entries chronicling the main character's experiences contending with crime, moody noir cinematography, and a mysterious string of murders to solve. But what lies below these aesthetics? What does the film attempt to say about the presuppositions of the Batman character, and about society more broadly? Well, appropriately enough, given the story is about a vigilante keeping his identity secret, one of the core themes explored is that of unmasking the truth. There are recurring allusions to the dichotomy between masked and unmasked, as well as an exploration of what that means for individuals and society. Near the start of the film, we're introduced to a group of thugs who have their faces painted like skulls, white and ghoulish, pursuing a lone citizen with the intention of beating him up. Just as Bruce Wayne wears a frightening mask to scare people and signify he's a threat, these thugs do the same. One member, who appears to be slightly reluctant to commit the violence his group encourages, only has half his face painted, differentiating him from all his confederates. This costume choice shows humanity on the unpainted side of the gang member's face. It indicates he's not fully committed to the violent, cruel, criminal behaviour the rest of the group have given themselves to. He's only half in, and his soul can still be salvaged. This section of the opening is connected to the concept later discussed in the film that people are not good or bad based on purely individual binary choices to adhere to or disregard universally accessible moral standards, but that the type of behaviour people are likely to act out, the kind of world they're pulled into, is dependent on their circumstances. This is something Selina comments on. Bruce has always had the luxury of adhering to certain traditional mores, and criticises Selina for not doing the same, for compromising herself, as he terms it. She points out that he must have grown up rich to be so naive. In line with this concept Selina unveils, the gang member with the half-painted face is surrounded by people moulding him into a criminal. He's trapped in a system that may ultimately doom his soul. The Riddler mentions that both Batman's mask and his own aren't worn to hide who they really are, but that the masks are more representative of their real identities than the faces below. The masks allow them to be what they truly are. The human faces underneath are the real masks for them. This is an idea that's been explored numerous times with previous iterations of the Batman character. In contrast to previous Batman films, Bruce spends more time in his suit as Batman in this new film than he does out of it as Bruce Wayne. Proving Riddler's aforementioned claim correct, in certain ways there's shown to be not much underneath Batman's mask. No person under there as such. When he's not wearing his vigilante outfit, he's so absent, his body so vacant, like a walking corpse, a vampire which can only thrive at night. He even says himself that he doesn't care about his commitments as Bruce Wayne, doesn't care about maintaining business relationships, etc. He comes across as awkward, dysfunctional, weirdly less human than when he's dressed as Batman. He seems like an odd recluse who treats those close to him badly, doesn't participate in society, and fails to have normal, open, warm conversations with anyone. It's only when he's wearing his costume that he can be himself, that a human being begins to shine through in some regards. The way he looks as Bruce Wayne also plays into this, as he is often shown to be scruffy, barely attending to his appearance at all. When removing his Batman costume, he's pale underneath, with a gaunt, sun-deprived face, white like a ghoul. His body is abused and bruised. He looks and acts like a drug addict, and his addiction is his pursuit of justice, or vengeance as he initially characterises it. There are numerous allusions to and depictions of drug taking, thematically complementing the obsessive, self-harming aspect of Bruce's personality. Throughout the film, there is an equivalence drawn between Batman and the villains he fights, particularly Riddler. When Batman is physically unmasked and we're shown him acting in the world as Bruce, we're presented with a further equivalence of this kind being drawn, because these villains are dysfunctional, obsessive weirdos, and that's exactly what Bruce Wayne is accentuated as, even more so than when he's hiding behind the mask of Batman. Unmasked, any trace of a cool, romantic mystique to his criminal behaviour is stripped away, and he's shown for what he might actually be: an unstable criminal with a lot of money and advanced combat equipment. Riddler is on a righteous quest to unmask the corruption in Gotham City. The politicians and legal officials who preside over the city present a front of respectability, when behind the scenes they're behaving in immoral and even criminal ways. And this hypocrisy, this deceit is a sin Riddler is driven to expose and punish. The image of Bruce's parents is targeted for unmasking by Riddler under this same premise. He reveals supposed hidden truths to Bruce about them, the most damning being that Thomas Wayne went to Falcone to have a journalist killed. This supposed truth is subsequently shown to only be partially correct, and the virtuous image of Bruce's parents partially restored by Alfred's account, which adds new context to their history and apparently corrects some falsehoods. The new information Alfred gives casts Thomas Wayne as a good man who made a mistake which he tried to rectify, rather than a calculating criminal. Bruce's father was apparently horrified when he found out Falcone murdered the journalist on his behalf, and wanted to go to the police about it. So this truth about the Waynes is unmasked and then unmasked again in a Scooby-Doo fashion, if you like. This film plays with many of the same concepts as previous significant takes on the character, reaching some different conclusions, some variations of the same conclusions, and approaching certain things from different perspectives. As such, it seems relevant to make comparisons to The Dark Knight, as there are various similarities and ways in which this new film likely draws from this predecessor, whether it be directly or indirectly. Proposing and solving a riddle is in itself a process of masking and then unmasking the truth. So using the Riddler as the main villain was an appropriate choice to set up this thematic exploration around truth. The same theme is explored in The Dark Knight, but in a different way. In that film, the Joker embarks on a crusade to unmask the truth about society, humanity, those in power, symbols of virtue, etc. But he doesn't achieve it by exposing overt, easy-to-condemn examples of corruption in the authority structure of society. He does it in a more extensive and frighteningly disillusioning way, unmasking a far more uncomfortable truth. Not merely that there are corrupt people in positions of power, or in society generally, but that even the best of people are corruptible. There's evil in everyone, and it just takes the right amount of pressure to bring it out. Applying that pressure is exactly what the Joker does in that film to prove his point. In this regard, the Joker from The Dark Knight and the Riddler from The Batman have opposing motivations, because Joker seeks to show the meaninglessness of symbols, such as heroes and virtuous authority figures, demonstrating that they can always be broken down, which means they never stood for the transcendent values they claim to stand for in the first place, and that if the symbols for those values are shown to be lies, maybe the values themselves are also lies. It's a nihilistic worldview. In contrast, Riddler is seeking to expose corruption to punish those who have betrayed the values they claim to stand for. The purpose to his crusade is predicated on the implicit assumption that external, transcendent moral values exist and ideally should be adhered to for a better world to arise. As earlier mentioned, there is an equivalence drawn between Batman and Riddler at multiple points. They're both shown to be driven by an obsessive mania which is detrimental to their personal lives. Their behaviours are shown to be the same at some points. For example, they both journal their vigilante activities. They both wear masks. They're both vigilantes, fighting injustice as they interpret it. Batman is chasing low-level criminals, thugs, thieves and murderers, and Riddler is killing corrupt authority figures in the city. Riddler even initially considers Batman as his accomplice in committing his crimes. Until being corrected, he views himself and Batman as on the same side. The similarities between these two vigilantes is an uncomfortable truth unmasked to Bruce and potentially the audience. Similar to how the negative consequences of Batman's presence are explored in other stories, such as The Dark Knight, where the topic is discussed in terms of escalation, as Gordon puts it, and dramatised through citizens following Batman's example of vigilantism, they're explored in this new film too. Riddler is inspired to do what he does by Batman's example, to be a vigilante like Batman and take the law into his own hands. The results of this lead to Batman's presence having to increase and his tactics having to ramp up, which potentially means Riddlers, or other hypothetical criminals, will do the same in response, and so up it escalates. In that regard, this film joins prior self-reflective Batman stories in raising the question of whether or not Batman's presence in Gotham is a good thing. While in The Dark Knight, Batman has copycats dressing like him and mimicking his actions, in The Batman, the Riddler has these kinds of followers. The difference is he embraces them, while in The Dark Knight, Batman admonishes his followers to abide by the law, a hypocritical demand, but more admirable than an active endorsement of violence and anarchy from civilians. Batman is so obsessively focused on one thing that he's oblivious to the corrosive effect his crusade has on himself and others close to him. He treats Alfred, for example, with little common decency, and has no interest in participating in society as Bruce Wayne, and mixing with people normally. Unlike his philanthropic parents, he has not been allocating his wealth towards social projects, but instead towards his private arsenal. He embarked on his quest to help good prevail, but doesn't realise his soul is being poisoned by the whole endeavour, the abyss he's staring into pulling him in further and further. The good in him, the humanity, is being drained by the devouring vampire of his obsession. Another core theme intertwined with that of unmasking the truth is that of vengeance. Its utility, futility, and destructive nature are explored. The three most central characters in the film, Batman, Catwoman, and Riddler, are each on a vengeance quest of some sort. Batman is on a crusade against the criminal underbelly of Gotham to punish crime and avenge his parents. Catwoman wants to kill Falcone to avenge her mother and her murdered friend, among other reasons. Riddler wants to take revenge on the elites for their lies, hypocrisy, and inaction which allows for injustice to continuously prevail. He also wants to punish society more broadly for their sins of complicity in that system of injustice. Through becoming involved in the vengeance quests of Riddler and Catwoman, and being opposed to their means, a mirror is held up to Batman, and he's shown the reality of what his own vengeance quest represents, and what an appeal to vengeance represents more broadly. The unacceptable nature of Riddler's revenge quest is immediately obvious to Bruce. Bruce is a member of the elite echelons of society that Riddler is targeting, and Riddler's first murder of the film makes an orphan of a young boy who Bruce obviously relates to. Riddler's murdering people, targeting some who are corrupt and others who are innocent. That says it all, really. However, Catwoman's revenge quest is slightly less clear-cut, at least in a world of the subversion of official legal process where Batman participates, as she is primarily targeting one known criminal, a mob boss who causes the proliferation of crime throughout the city, probably disproportionately to many other criminals of his ilk. He is directly responsible for conscious, overt, daily injustice. He's not simply a corrupt elite, but he's someone who corrupts the elites, corrupts the system of justice. He's the exact type of person Batman has been targeting on his own crusade. But Catwoman intends to push her revenge further than Batman ever has, seeking to murder her enemy. This is a line Batman will not cross, and he finds himself stopping Catwoman crossing it. Following on from this situation, and thematically tied to it, near the end of the film, Riddler's group of vigilante followers are beaten to submission. When the last of these disciples is defeated and unmasked, he's asked to identify himself. This criminal's response is to repeat the line Batman gave in answer to a similar question at the start of the film. "I'm vengeance." Batman's attention is captured by this proclamation, and he's seemingly disturbed by it, disturbed by what it reveals, the fact that there are parallels between himself and these criminals. Bruce has been making some of the same mistakes as them. They act as another mirror to show him the error of his ways. Through all this, he learns that the logical endpoint of his own quest for vengeance is counterproductive, as it only adds to the crime landscape he's trying to fight against, perpetuating the cycle of violence and injustice. By the end of the film, Batman makes moves to turn his back on vengeance, its insufficiency having been uncovered to him. He realises that rather than a symbol of fear, he needs to become a symbol of hope for any positive change to result in Gotham City. But what do you think? Do you agree with this analysis? Are you a fan of this new iteration of the Batman? Do you have any other observations about the film which haven't been covered here? Let me know in the comments below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more videos like this and others about other things as well. Thanks for watching, see you next time.